Ladies and gentlemen, I have failed to properly tell you about one of the most important cornerstones of your poker development, and that is the Carrot Poker Discord group. This group currently contains, as I record this video, 783 members. A bunch of those are pros, you know, a lot of the same people who are making videos on Carrot Corner for you subscribers, people like Alex, Sebastian, James, Akshar, all of these kind of people have the light blue names on Carrot Corner, and they're giving out advice for free all the time. We have 9 different hand channels, 7 of which are actually staffed by Carrot Corner pros, so that if you post a hand in there, not only will you get some replies from the community and other people will let you know what they think, but the sensei, as we call them, the pro that looks after that channel, will also be obligated to come in and give you some advice as to how you played the hand before you close that thread. I currently have a hand waiting for me in my hand channel, and it's been there a few days. I should really get to that, but it has been the weekend and all of that. So yeah, I'll be giving this student some advice on how to play the Ace Queen of Spades later today. This is a gated community, so we don't just let the riffraff in off the street. Naturally, we've got to keep this a really high standard of analysis place, so we're only looking for you to join if you're willing to be serious about your poker education. That said, all you've got to have done is subscribe to Carrot Corner. Even if you only subscribe for a month or two, you get lifetime access. If you pick up a premium course, of course, this July, you get 3 months of subscriptions. We're literally giving that away, so check out at carrotcorner.com. But for today, we are, of course, back with episode 8 of season 1 of Poker Gauntlet. Time is running out. Hey, editor, play that intro music. Let's do it. So as I say, time is running out. There are only 3 episodes left in season 1. Jan still has the high score. Today's contestant's name is Luke. Can Luke beat Jan's 5.65, which is still the top Gauntlet score? Let's get into the action. Let's find out.
Flashback.
Well, that's the thing, guys. We don't actually have a name for the student. Hopefully the editor will have the student's name on the screen right now. I love this time of day when I get to record the Poker Gauntlet. Let's go, Luke. Let's see what you got for us, my friend. Ace Queen offsuit here. The suspense is building. Is this going to be the episode where someone finally knocks Jan off his arrogant pedestal? Sat there with 5.65 out of 10, like some kind of big shot. Could this be his downfall? You know what they say. The bigger they are, the harder they fall. Ace 10-9 in this ISO'd pot. Okay. I like a big bet on this flop. I think when someone limps... Oh, look at the stack size, Pete. Wake up! You know, I actually did that once because I was tilted in like 2011. Like I literally hit myself in the face without the editor making it look worse than it was. Don't do that, guys. Don't try this at home. Pleased to report I'm more stable now. Anyway, we have no money behind here, right? So ordinarily, if you're 100 big blinds deep with this hand, what you really need to do in this spot is bet pretty big. And that ensures that when the board does run out 5 of diamonds, 3 of hearts, that you can just go for like the 3 big streets and get loads of value. If the board runs out badly, you can start pot controlling and checking later and just seeing what happens. You know, your investment ceiling is going to come down in that case. With this SPR though, your investment ceiling is already tiny. And what you need to try and answer here is the question of, is villain investing more money by calling your bets or by leading on the turn? At this low SPR, it will be much harder for bad turns to kill your action and bad runouts to kill your action because villain is so committed. My main advice to students on textures like this, or situations like this, SPRs like this, is to check and just let the opponent jam the turn with like Jack 6 suited or pocket 4s or something. So I think just opening the door to villain being spewy here is really important. And the way we want to do that is either by checking back or by betting really tiny. Now, if this board was like incredibly dry, like it was something like Ace, Queen, 3, Rainbow, I would definitely say that check is the best play because the board can't really get much worse for many hands in your opponent's range. And you just want to open that door as wide as possible to all the air so that it can bluff, right? Think about their range in compartments. and try to figure out how to maximize against the most compartments. Because this is a little bit wetter, and there are going to be some hands like draws jamming the flop here, but not investing necessarily later, opening the action here could actually have a lot of benefit. And so I think on this specific texture, I'm leaning towards betting like 2 big blinds. Something really small. You could even make it like 199, like you're trying to sell a poker course. Oh wait, yeah, we did that on Carrot Corner. Anyway, yeah, I'd go really small. So this is like almost ideal. It's just like slightly too big, maybe. Now we just have the absolute monopoly on this. Like we're crushing absolutely everything. That's a really great turn, both for getting paid and for our hands equity. I guess we just jam. I don't think there's a better way to get action here at this SPR. I think just jamming turn is fine. We do decide to check. The problem with check in my mind is that it doesn't really allow that many hands to stack off that aren't stacking off already, and it can cost you money. For example, if villain has king jack or queen jack or 7-8 or something like that, you've got to ask, like, who is this player? What have they done so far? What do we know about them? And if you're bad at poker and lazy and you don't want to make an effort and you'd rather just fail and you like being stuck at 25 and L, you could answer that question by going, we don't know. We don't know them. They're unknown. Oh no. But like, that's clearly nonsense because they've played a 15 big blind stack massively, passively so far. That rhymes. That sounds ugly. I didn't mean it. But yeah, they're playing placidly. You know, they're going to be the sort of person that checks queen jack here and then calls it off but doesn't bluff the river. That's very, very likely. The other problem is that if villain has ace 5 or king 10 or any of these other myriad hands that are just going to be stacking off here, if you check back and the river is a spade, they may no longer actually stack off. So I think jam is definitely the right play here. Check is a sizable mistake the more I think about it. I really don't like this. The thing is, if you want to open the door against villain's absolute bottom range, stacking off, then you need to check the flop probably or bet even smaller. And if you're going to bet what you bet on the flop, you've now filtered them to probably not having absolute trash. And if they don't have absolute trash like 5-4, then what are you really opening the door to now by checking back? I think you just want to jam the turn. As played, very, very easy call. Not much else to say. Villain commits a polarization mistake on the river with jacks, because that's what people do. They slow play pre-flop with the jacks, and then they make a massive polarization error. Like, villain gets a 0 out of 10 for this hand, but villain, with his 15 big blind stack, you know, spending the rest of his GG poker balance, he's not actually the Gauntlet contestant. If he were, he would score 0.73 out of 10 for the entire show. Probably. But he's not. It's Luke. And Luke is going to drop some points here. I like the flop sizing. It's a tad big, but I like it. The turn is a mistake. I'm going to have to start Luke off here with, drum roll please, a 3.5 out of 10. It's a harsh start. The carrot man is in a bad mood. Not really, I'm in quite a good mood. But I'm in that good mood where I'm enjoying being nasty. You know that way you get, guys? When your good mood means giving people 3.5 out of 10. You ever do that in life? Just hand people 3 out of 10 for their behavior that day and stuff. Don't do that. That's like really sociopathic behavior. Blind versus blind into the world of wide ranges. Cruiser just sent me a video. You know, our coach Cruiser sent me a video the other day about blind versus blind play as a small blind. And I was like, this is the fucking amazing video. And I started watching. I was like, this is incredible. And then like 4 days later, he sent one as blind versus blind as the big blind. His Reg Battles, Reg Wars series, whatever it's called, is phenomenal. We now have 9 episodes received. We have 3 out there already, 4 out there already. And we're going to release the other 6 over the next couple of months. We like to drip feed you at Carrot Corner, you know, just keep you on the hook like that. Do subscribe and you'll be able to watch Reg Wars along with other stuff at carrotcorner.com. We go for a check call here, which I really, really like. I think against the 25 and L rush and cash pool, we want to be generally checking this node, because if we bet here, we actually simplify the spot for your opponent. Imagine your opponent is kind of like a brain dead barbarian with a club that doesn't really have fingers small enough to press the right keys on the keypad. Now, when you check to them, that's just how you should imagine weaker players generally, guys, right? Like, don't be shy. Imagine them as being like not really knowing what they're doing, because it's true. So when you bet this flop at them, you kind of simplify the equation, because if they have like 6-3 of diamonds, you make it quite easy for them to make the right play against your hand and go ahead and fold. However, when you check queen 9 here, you give the barbarian with the club a lot of room to swing the club and just do some very silly stuff. So, you know, this is a spot where checking is actually a lot better than betting, even though your solver in its conniving, rigging the game kind of ways is going to have you believe that everything is indifferent. GTO Lizard is going to be like, all right, you can do like 19 different things here and it doesn't matter, and that's utter bullshit. And you should never listen to GTO Lizard, guys, never, unless you're interested in like game theory, which, you know, you could be as a baseline, but not as a playbook. It doesn't tell you what to do, it just tells you how to think as a baseline. Okay, so flop goes check call. We should check call down here, probably, because this is a very wide base range. This is a very short stack player. They can have almost anything, and the amount of spew that is possible in blind versus blind nodes when you have someone who is ostensibly defending like every combo under the sun. Like, this guy could have 8-4 off here, like you never know. The amount of spew that's possible here, and the ratio of bluffs to value that is actually unleashed here if villain does decide to find the bluff button is so obscene that like you can live with getting stacked by the guys that under bluff. There's not enough of them to compensate for the desperate maniacs who are just down to their last 30 big blinds and want to punt. So easy call down. Do not fold the river here. Please do not fold the river. Guys, it's that time. It's time for a good old carrot corner prayer. Let's go. O poker gods, please find it within thy generous hearts to bless our student with the gift of bravery and analytical competence. Allow our hero to understand that big blind ranges, when checked to and left unfiltered, are incredibly wide and weak, and give him the conviction to punish his foes for their trespasses. Amen. Let's go. Good call down, Luke. Love it. Yeah, what did I say about the 8-4 off? Exactly. But 9-5, unfortunately, this is 2-pair. Never question yourself, guys, when you make a call down like this. This is an immaculately played hand. It's not like that hard a spot, but you could have gone wrong. 8.5 out of 10. Should it even get a 9? Because you could have bet the flop. You could have folded the river. Nah, it's going to get an 8.5. It's not a hard enough hand to get a 9. This is an 8.5 out of 10, though. Solid. Solid start here. Okay, not so good in the first hand, but we're climbing back up now. I have high hopes for Luke. I don't know Luke. I have no idea who Luke is. Just a random person that's obviously bought something on Carrot Corner and then sent me some hands when I asked for them on the Discord group. Another reason to be on the Discord group is you get to be on Poker Gauntlet. That's the vessel. That's the vehicle. Vessel, vehicle. One of those. Okay, ace-8, hand 3. Check. Again, I like it because random recreational, going to do more spewing this way. Leave the door open. Your hand doesn't crave like 3 massive streets of value anyway on that many runouts. So definitely just check is good here. Now I'd start betting. The problem is on the king, right? And the thing that Luke's not really putting together here is that villain has just turned a ton of second pair, and that's likely going to call so much wider than it's going to bet. Also, just imagine you have like 100 fish standing in a parking lot, right? Car park for you people from the UK. Imagine that the ones who are aggressive and stabby or tilted or impatient light up red, and the other ones light up blue. And then the flop is played. What happens? The people who are aggro light up red, and they usually stab the flop with whatever hand they want to bluff with, right? It doesn't really matter what they have. It's more of just like a modal thing. It's like they're in the mood to bluff or they're not, or they're the sort of person that stabs or they're not. So when the ones that don't light up red aren't in the hand anymore, and it's mostly the passive ones that light up blue, you're on this turn, and like the best way to get value is now to aggress, not to check and hope they bluff. If they've not bluffed the flop, it's not that they'll never bluff the turn, but you're actually now weeding the aggro ones out of the pool by the fact that flop wasn't stabbed. This is kind of weird inductive reasoning, but it does definitely work. Maybe it's deductive reasoning, I forget. Anyway, we go for check call. I don't like this. I think this is leaving so much money on the table. This is a horrible hand, actually, because we haven't bet the turn when we should have. Now we should check raise, because honestly, the opponent never has us beat. Like, ever. Like, the amount of times we lose with ace-8 against this particular line of check back flop and tiny bet turn is like 4% of the time. Luke's not hand reading. This is the problem. See, with kids these days, the problem with the kids these days growing up in the poker streets is they're like, oh, it's an optional play. But really, like, actually, when you hand read, when you ask yourself the, you know, that innocent little question of, what does my opponent have? Which might be a good thing to ask yourselves from time to time, guys. You might just want to ask that. If you don't ask that, get the hell out of here. You don't deserve to play the game and you never will. Just leave. You should raise because you have like 90% equity. And when you have 90% equity out of position on the turn, you should raise. You might not know you have 90% because, you know, you're used to seeing this as not that much equity. Because button is tricky and trappy and slow plays and blah, blah, blah. Not happening. Bad. Bad. King of Spades River, that's like the worst card ever because the king does merge all the time for that sizing on the turn. You could lead small here and just try and get called by a worse ace. Your kicker does actually play against ace 3, ace 4, ace 5, a 7, a 6, pocket 5s. It's probably a bit thin though, especially if villains like merging 9s on the turn as well. I'm not folding, obviously. Like, we have way too much equity. I just really wish we'd bet the turn. We're going to lose to king a fair bit here, but easy call. Yep. Okay, we do run into the king. Need to check raise that turn if you're not going to lead it, but you need to just lead it. This hand's going to get a poor score. You really screwed up that turn badly, my friend. Like, you couldn't have made it. You couldn't really have got it any more wrong. I'm going to have to give this hand a... I'm going to give it a 3 out of 10. I think it's a pretty bad hand. I think that's I mean, it's not like the worst thing imaginable, but it's up there with like the kind of EV loss that stops you being a winning player. I'm beginning to lose faith that Luke is going to be the one to take the high score, but maybe I'm being too harsh. You know, maybe it's going to turn around. Hand number 4, Jack 9 of diamonds. We go for the open. We get called by the big blind. Don't we just love the gauntlet, guys? Doesn't the gauntlet just have the best viewer retention? Admit it, you're all watching. Tell me in the comments if you're still watching. I bet you are. How can you look away? It's either a car crash or it's like an act of heroism. It's just like, what's not to like? So for the same reasons that like against recreational players, you normally just want to like play your hand and maximize EV and give them more problems to solve. I'm kind of a fan of checking the flop here. I don't hate this tiny bet though. Like, it's still going to give them some problems. Like, it's okay, but I think like checking back and letting them spew lead the turn is really good. By the way, my default assumption, if someone's playing 25NL on GG Poker, like this student is, would be that the average player is really bad, right? So I'm kind of giving the average player no respect whatsoever because the regs are meh and the fish are like awful, right? So I'm kind of giving the average player the scope to make a lot of turn probe errors if we check back, which is why I like checking back. But anyway, it's not a huge deal. Easy check now, middle of range. So this is where we have to be kind of careful, right? Because generally speaking, against a line like this where they've filtered the flop, we should be less inclined to call them down than if we've left their range unfiltered, right? That's like a good maxim. Here, it depends like what sizing we've gone, and it depends how the board runs out. So when we go this sizing, they can probably call like any pocket pair. They can probably call any gutter. They can call a bunch of stuff like Jack X, Queen X, 7X, like Ace High. They can call almost anything, right? Some fish fold none of their range to the sizing. They're just like, screw you, I'm not folding to that insult of a bet. On the turn, though, the board wettens to such an extent that so many gutters and stuff just get there. And it's also less appetizing for a fish to attack you now by bluffing because this board just got wetter, right? And again, I'm saying fish, it might not be, but a lot of people are. So when we face this river sizing, after all this filtering, when all straight draws kind of get there, I'm honestly just inclined to fold my hand. Now, had we gone bigger on the flop, this would be very, very easy. Like, it would be a night and day fold. It'd be absolutely terrible to call. I have some sympathy for calling here, based on the fact that we went so tiny on the flop. The villain might be here with king 4 of hearts or something. Like, there are more natural bluffs, but I just think the bigger sizing on the kind of straighty, scary run out where ace king gets there, you know, weaker players are always going, yeah, you got ace king, mate. Yeah, you got ace king in it. They're always saying that when I go and play live at like the Hippodrome in London. I'm like, no, I don't just have ace king all the time. It's only 16 combos. What's wrong with you? That's what I say to them. This call, I have a little bit of sympathy for it, but I think it's a mistake. I think we're not winning 30% of the time here against the sizing on this run out. If this was a deuce on the turn, or the sizing was 3.5 big blinds, I'm calling all day. But the combination of the near pot size bet and the run out being what it is and the filtering on the flop, I'm pretty sure this is a fold. And I'm going to give this hand, I think there's a mistake here, slight mistake on the flop because I prefer checking, and like kind of a more moderate mistake on the river. I'm going to give this hand a 4.5 out of 10. Okay, moving on, we have the pocket jacks. We go for the open. We pick up the call, and it's going to be a monotone board. I like to bet these boards, usually, and the reason for that in this pool is that people aren't going to bluff the monotone board on the turn as liberally as they're going to bluff like innocuous textures. Fish are kind of like silly, like, I don't know, like charging bulls. Like, they're kind of like, oh, this feels safe, I bet. Or this feels messy and looks visually disturbing, I check. They're very like primal in that sense. And that's because they just haven't, you know, I don't want to like shit all over fish here. I don't want to like insult recreational players. But they don't have the thought processes to fall back on that a lot of you guys watching this do, right? Like I said to one of my students the other day, he's like a struggling 25NL player, but I said, you have more in common with me than you do with the fish in your games thought process wise. And he was like, nah, no way. And I was like, no, seriously, like the fish in your games, they're not thinking about ranges at all. Like you might be getting some stuff wrong, but you're attempting to think in the right way. And a lot of your thoughts are going to be like rational, right? So what's going to happen on these board textures is that people are just going to go into their shell a lot more. They're going to just like be more passive. So checking back to bluff catch here doesn't go as well. And just betting really tiny for value probably goes a bit better. But I don't have a huge preference here. Like, I don't hate this check or anything. Obviously, a call is played. We have a ton of equity. People are going to merge a lot. Easy call in the river as well. You have the Jack of Clubs blocker, which is, like, relevant to some extent. I don't want to say it's, like, a deal breaker, but it's relevant. And villain could have ace 8. Villain could have 9s. Like, villain could just be merging here. This is the thing as well. You need to understand that when you leave them unfiltered and they bet twice, sometimes their thought process is just, you checked, I bet. Like, it's that simple. It's like, you scared, me fight. It's like literally that primitive. And because of that, you just can't go folding hands like jacks. And because of that, you actually care whether you have jacks or 7s here. In GTO, you'd probably rather have the 7s because you would still have a bluff catcher and you would probably be unblocking more of the natural offsuit broadways that would just lead here, right? Maybe not in GTO, but like against like blocker properties against pool, I think the Jack of Spades is like a negative blocker card here, right? But I don't care about that. Against the fish, I'd rather have jacks and 10s. I'd rather have 10s and 9s because they are sometimes going to merge all the way down. So there's the Queen Jack. There we go. Boom. Leave them unfiltered. They do overbluff. They overbluff less on this texture. Villain's hero's check makes him look like a genius when, you know, villain goes ahead and does this. Overall, I have a slight preference for betting the flop, but I really don't care that much. And I think the turn call and river call are really good. I'm going to give this hand a solid... I mean, it's kind of an easy spot, right? So it's going to get a 6.5 out of 10. I can't give it much more than that because it's pretty simple. Okay, next hand we have the King 8 of Spades. We're in the big blind and we peel this cutoff open. Jack 9-3. How the hell do we end up playing a pot here? Okay, so we turn an 8. We check. They bet 3.5 big blinds into 4. This is a really annoying spot, and it's a very close one because, like, in some sense, people are going to be very mergy here in a way that's bad for King 8 because they're going to bet 10-9. They're going to bet a 9. They're going to bet like Ace 8 here, even though they shouldn't. Stuff like that. The good news is they'll also bet like 10-8 suited and 8-7. There just aren't that many worse 8s than our hand here. I guess there's like Queen 8 as well. Then there's like the Jack, which will usually bet the flop, but not always, because people do just go into their shell, as I say, on a monotone board. They get a bit spooked. They could just have nothing here as well, but this is kind of like a bigger sizing. I think this spot is super close. I don't even hate a fold here with like minimal redraw, you know, like bigger turn sizing monotone board. But then again, like they haven't c-bet flop yet. I think this depends on position. Like if they're button, I think I'm calling here. And if they're under the gun, I think I'm just folding. And if they're cut off, it's like somewhere in between. Pre-flop position has a lot to do with these spots generally. I would fold now. I think like the bigger bet now. It's not a fantastic spot. Like, okay, the data point of check bet, we know from grade E of the Carrot Poker School, is a bit overbluffed generally. It's especially overbluffed if your opponent is the button, but texture also comes into this, right? So you really do have to consider all of these variables. And this texture is what we would call like a revolting texture for a fish. They're just going to be a bit put off here. And yeah, I think this is a fold, but I don't know actually. It's kind of close. My instinct tells me this is not a spot we should call down just with these 2 bet sizes on this board, though. I think this is a small mistake on the river. I don't think it's like terrible, though. I do think there'll be some amount of bluffing going on here. We won't be miles away from the target equity. Turn, you could fold. River, you probably should fold. I'm going to give this hand a 5 out of 10. I think it's kind of difficult to find folds here for a lot of people because you have to take that normal data point of like the line is overbluffed, then you have to look at the texture and say, but with this sizing on this particular texture from this position, everything is now underbluffed. To get good at this, guys, you want to do grade E of the Carrot Poker School. Of course, it's going to get you good at weighing up all these different data points, all these different variables. It's based on millions and millions of hands of data from pools like this, a bit higher generally in stakes, but not like that much more advanced. It's made for like 50 NL, 100 NL, that sort of level. Okay, so the 48 of hearts in the big blind. We face the limp. We're going to go for a check here. 6-4 deuce rainbow. Gonna go for a check. Okay, like you can probably do some leading on this board in theory, but I don't really care about that. I'm gonna call here. I'm not really bothered about raising. This is the kind of hand that can raise. The problem is against the soft recreational pool, against a weaker player, your fold equity by the river against better hands is going to be kind of low. So when the turn comes good for you and you're meant to like keep blasting the 4 as a bluff and stuff, I just don't think that's happening as often. And yeah, I don't even think like... I think you'll get 3-bet on the flop a lot more by a recreational than you will by a regular as well, which obviously sucks for your hand and it's 5 outs. So I would just call here. I think it's the best play in real life. The king turn is one they should be barreling a lot. Because they're earlier position here, they're hijack. Make no mistake, that's like a very bad thing for us. I think this is very close again. We do have some quite good implied odds because the 4 and the 8 are both super pure cards that we can get check raise in on. Probably you can call again here. Yeah, probably you should call again here. I think villain's still bluffing enough unpaired stuff and the implied odds are so good on your cards because the board is like kind of harmless. I think you want to do that. I would fold the river if villain goes for it on the king. Triple barrels from early position are going to be very underbluffed, especially when the river pairs, so this is a very clear fold. If we call here, I'm just going to make the same diagnosis that I make to like practically every fucking 25NL contestant ever. You're a calling station. Stop calling all the time. Start actually evaluating what to do. I bet you's going to call. Yeah, I fucking knew it. I felt it in my bones, guys. The student has no fold button. Like, this is hijack. This is the king pairing on the river. This is just not a spot that's going to be overbluffed at all. Like, you might win here. It's not like the worst spot ever. Like, don't get me wrong, it's hard to hit this texture, so, and people will bluff up into their ace queen even though they shouldn't and stuff like that sometimes, so that's the saving grace. But usually this is just bad. Okay, I will say one thing, and that is that if you know that the opponent is like a loose recreational that's opening like random shit, you can make this call because then their whole player type is different. If you don't know that, you definitely shouldn't make this call. Overall, you just shouldn't call triple barrels from early position unless you have that read that they have something closer to a late position range. If this happened blind versus blind, this is an easy call down, but it's not blind versus blind. Okay, so even though we won this time, I'm going to say this is a mistake. It is possible that there was some kind of read here though. And so I am going to go ahead and hedge my bets. I'm going to give this hand a 4.5 because it's just quite likely in these situations that you have some idea who the recreational player actually is. Let's just see what the HUD says. Probably won't be a big sample. Okay, 75-50. So it is a small sample though. Maybe Luke could see that these numbers were a little bit like crazy in game. I'm going to give this hand a 5 out of 10 actually. I think it's a bit too likely there's some kind of read going on here. I'm going to give the student the benefit of the doubt because this is a really winning call against like this player when you have that stat line. Like if you have that stat line, even over like 16 hands, it's still very likely to be a wild fish. So yeah, I think I have some sympathy there actually. Okay, ace king off. Go for the open, get called in 2 spots. I'd like to see a check here. I think the hand has a lot of showdown. I mean, a small bet's not horrible, but I think I'd like to see a check. Now we just want to be going absolutely nuts for value. Villain leads, and then this gets raised. Very easy fold. I mean, there's just nothing else to say. Like, this is just super strong. They were procedurally checking the flop, so they're both totally uncapped. The raising range here is going to be 2 pair plus mostly. Not a spot anyone ever bluffs in. Not even a spot people raise 1 pair in, like king queen. If we call here, this is a monumental error. Like, this is really, really bad. If we call here, we're not going to call here. Surely. Surely. Oh my god. This is so bad because this gets reopened sometimes as well. Our equity's tiny, our redraw's tiny. Just let go of your hand. No one cares that your absolute hand strength is ace king. No one cares that you under-repped your hand. No one actually gives a shit. This is just terrible. Like, you're just losing a ton. Okay, fold the river because you should have folded the turn. This is horrible. Absolutely horrible. You deserve to lose to the 4-4s, the quads, the quattros. You deserve it. I'm going to have to give this hand a 1 out of 10. This is a horrendous turn call and a really bad river call. This costs you a shit ton of money. You're basically never ever winning. Like, to win here, you need villain to be losing their mind with like 5-3 or like 3s or king queen or something. It's just like, it's like sub 10% of the time easily. Yeah, 1 out of 10 for this hand. Okay, hand number 9, we have 2 hands to go. Pocket, fish hooks. Once again, go for the 3-bet, gets cold called. You can see, guys, what this pool is like. You guys have no excuse for not beating this pool now if you've watched the series. This series is basically a complete guide, a complete roadmap, a manual on how to beat 25NL and soft pools. It really is. 25NL shouldn't be difficult. You just need to value bet. You need to stay out of trouble when people are never bluffing. You need to stop calling because you have ace king. You need to stop doing stuff like that, and you're going to be fine. Okay, we go for the small c-bet here. I think this is reasonable. We get raised. I would just fold my hand. Like, this guy cold called a 3-bet. He probably has a queen or kings or aces or something most of the time here. I don't care how far up we are in our range. I don't care what the implications are of folding this hand for MDF. I don't care how exploitable we are. We should be exploitable against fish. You should always be very, very exploitable in any spot that you think your opponent's unbalanced. Just make sure that the way you're exploitable is the opposite way from what they're actually doing, right? So if they're too nitty here, that they're just like cold calling and not really aggressing much. I mean, who cold calls a 3-bet? It's generally a passive player, right? And then like they raise you on the flop. I would just fold immediately. I would just say this is a burning building spot, probably, where like you're in the burning building, you can just leave at the first opportunity. Now I think about it, I'm somewhat changing my mind though. This is ridiculous. I made such a strong case for folding here. I think it probably is still just about a fold, but people will do this with 10s and 9s. I just realized they'll cold call 10s and 9s and they'll play this way. No, I think we should peel. I forgot all about that. Like, fish are kind of merging a bit here. Like, I do think this is a queen or kings or aces a lot, but I also think kings and aces will 4-bet pre, and I think 10s and 9s may play this way. Actually, I've changed my mind. I think we should call. Okay. I have some sympathy, but if villain goes mad on the turn, now you fold, right? This is the key, because now the merges like 10s will stop aggressing. They'll check back. So that's probably now what villain has is like a draw 10s or 9s, maybe kings or aces. I think the best play in the river is like a very small block bet, like quarter pot or something, probably. We go for check, and then they bet. Wow. So now they just don't have 10s or 9s again, right? They're back to just having it, I think. I think this bet check bet line is really bad for us. Like, when I'm hand reading properly, I think I just fold here. Cold call, and then c-bet, and then raise flop is already just super strong. And we only peeled flop, like, reluctantly because of the chance of them merging sometimes. It's not even that big a chance, honestly. That's why I think flop is, like, close to a fold. Maybe it's a call. I'm really on the fence about flop. I keep toing and throwing about it, but I do think that this is a fold because 9s and 10s are very unlikely to do this now. Like, they'll bet like 12 big blinds. You're not going to bet 36 very often at all. A queen can still be in there and slow play turn. Overpair can still be in there. Flush now gets there. That's like the main bluff that's going to raise flop. You don't block any flushes. Yeah, I think I fold here. Yeah, I don't like it. Okay. Once again, we are in a pool where our friend Luke has reads that we do not have. He has a HUD that we do not have switched on. You could say that this is a criticism about the gauntlet, and villain, sure enough, is 54-20 over a fairly big sample, and is a maniac. When you have that read, when you've seen that player do that, when you see that stat line, this line becomes okay. Like, as soon as their base range becomes something absurd, this now becomes okay because they just have all this random shit going on, right? So then the river call, I have a lot of sympathy. Now, I think it's still important that we hand read here as if we're against like a somewhat normal player, and then we make allowances for the fact that villain is sort of a maniac. So this would have been unfair if we'd lost this hand because I wouldn't have caught the HUD stats. I should leave these on, actually. Even though you guys can't see them, I should leave them on. Given what we know about the player, I think I have to give a good score for this hand. I kind of like the flop call anyway. I think it's okay on second thought, even without that read. And with this read, like, the river call is just like really, really mandatory. Like, it swings very, very quickly. The reason I'm reevaluating, by the way, guys, is not because we won. It's not that I'm being results oriented. It's because we won against 8-3 of spades. That's why I'm reevaluating, right? We just found out that Luke probably knew who the player was, right? So don't think I'm being results oriented. I'm like, oh no, the villain showed up with this, so now Pete's changing his whole thought process. I'm realizing that the student probably had a read. I'm going to give this hand a 7 because I actually really like the way it was played with this stat line being observed, which it probably would have been. Final hand, pocket kings. Last hand of the day. We'll turn on the stat line. I think we have a new policy here that we will look at this in future. What do we have here? Just a reggy looking player and another reggy looking player so far. These don't look like recreationals. You could squeeze bigger, honestly. See, with kings in general, you can just put a bit more money in the pot if you want. It's probably just a free roll. It's probably just like winning money to make the pot a bit bigger. 13, 14, something like that. Okay, you can go small, you can check. I don't have a big preference. We get min raise, so there goes the theory that this is a reg. Even the players with like reasonable looking stat lines are still just gonna like do weird shit. This is a very, very bad spot for kings. We do have the diamond, we are getting 1,000,000 to 1. Sometimes fish will merge like a worse hand, but this is a very bleak spot. I think crying call and pray is maybe right, but I don't think fold is like that absurd. If we didn't have the king of diamonds, it might even swing to fold. I think it's that close that actually might be the deal breaker. Even though that turn is an ace and it's quite good for villain's range, and it's quite good for us, sorry, because it discounts some of the combos of ace queen, I still think this is like a bad spot. Also, how do you block more bluffs than the king of diamonds kings, right? It's kind of hard. So I'm still quite pessimistic. What is going on here? Like, we've made a boat, but it's a really silly boat. We do just beat like pocket fives now. What is our hand? We beat ace. No, we don't beat ace queen. That's quads. Also, we beat any queen. I don't know what the fuck the opponent's doing. I have no concept of what the opponent's range is here, man. This hand is absolutely mind-boggling. Let's think about this. Cold call pre. Oh, it wasn't the razor. It was the caller. And it's only 8 hands and they're 13-13 on the HUD. This could just be a fish. Probably slow playing turn a fair bit though. I think they could have a queen now. Like, I think that's possible. They could also have like a pocket pair. If I'm going to bet the river here, there's no way I'm going all in or even pot. I'm betting like half pot. And the idea there is that like villain does still have quads like a reasonable amount of the time. Like, I'm sure of it. Like, sometimes they'll bet turn, sure. But they can also merge now and have like jacks and stuff sometimes. I think I want to value bet the river. I think we've got enough equity here to value bet the river. I don't think we should bluff catch this node, like by check calling. I don't think we should enter into a line where our mode of investment is bluff catching. I don't like that so much. Yeah, I think we should just bet. I think they're going to have a queen sometimes. I think they're going to have a lower pair sometimes because they're just looking like a fish. Obviously, if this is a reg, you have to check because like they don't have any worse made hands calling. They either have like nothing or they have quads. But I think against a weaker player, you can bet something smallish. I don't mind this. You can maybe go a bit bigger. They min raise you. I mean, okay, just call. Like, they probably have an ace a fair bit here. They're also just going to have a queen that they're overplaying and stuff. Don't know what they're doing. Just don't fold here, whatever you do. Yeah, okay. So that's a fairly likely outcome, actually. Like, the minute we get raised on that flop, it actually trends pretty close to a fold. But look, did a few things quite well here. 1, the squeeze sizing was reasonable. 2, the river idea was right, that we have enough equity to go for a big bet, for a small bet, but not a big one. You could have gone a bit bigger, but I think the spirit of the bet on the river is like absolutely right. And then we call the min raise, which I think you just have to. There's just too much random stuff going on for the price, even though you're usually taking the worst of it. Yeah, it's a pretty good hand overall, actually. It's a fairly impressive hand. I think you could have gone wrong at a few junctures here. I think fold flop is an interesting exploit, though. Because like you are in really, really bad shape and you're not going to see a free river very often, even if the turn is a diamond, right? But I think you might call flop just because of the amount of random stuff in the price. I think you do call flop. I don't think you quite fold flop, but it's pretty grim. Yeah, I'm going to give this hand a 7 out of 10. I think it's a pretty good hand. All right, let's compile these scores. A very polarized performance from Luke. Lots of good scores, lots of bad ones. I learned some lessons about how to do Gauntlet better. We learn together, guys. We grow. Feel free to, provide other ideas in the comments of how we can improve this show. If you want to be like, I stopped watching because I got mad and I took out my aggressions on Pete. That's fine too. If you want to be that guy that like stopped watching because I, changed my mind about a score. That's fine too. Don't come back. But generally speaking, I think that was an interesting episode. That was a lot. There was a lot of stuff to think about there. Food for thought for sure. Let's look at the final score. Luke has scored 5.1 out of 10. Feels a bit disappointing. At times there, I really felt like we could have done it. Like we could have got the high score. That 1 out of 10 was just a really brutal nail in the coffin towards the end. A couple of 3s and 3.5s and stuff as well. Bringing it down. A bit of stationhood going on, no doubt. Well, guys, it's the end of another episode of Poker Gauntlet. And I'll just remind you one more time that this is July, and therefore you can still get a free month subscription with cash injection, 2 months free with grade 1 of the Carrot Poker School if you start your theory quest, and you get 6 months free subscription with the complete Carrot Poker School. That's our full scholarship bundle. Check out Carrot Corner only for July 2024. And yeah, just if you remember one thing from this video, it's that Pete can't really score very well. It's very hard to assign scores to hands where there are fish involved and reads are probably abound and stuff. But if you remember one other thing, then it's definitely that you shouldn't spew just because you have ace king. Like, you need to hand read. Like, stop looking at your absolute hand strength. Start hand reading. This is the basis to beating 25NL. I'll see you next time. Bye bye.